The cooking industry will always be around because humans are always going to want to eat, and humans aren't always going to want to cook their own food. And so we have the cooking industry, we have restaurants to allow other people to cook the food for them so that they don't have to do it themselves. And that's why the cooking industry isn't such a bad job option. Now, one of the major considerations will always be hours. Hours are what get you your pay. Problem is, you have a long range of hours. You could work early mornings because the restaurant opens early. You could work late nights because the restaurant closes late at night. And sometimes the restaurants do both. And you have to factor that in for the fact that you might be working double shifts. You might be working open to close. You'll be putting that restaurant together and you'll be taking it apart at the end of the night. The other major issue is the fact that it's very inconsistent. They have to keep up with the fact they have to predict what business is going to be like on a night-by-night basis. Problem is, customers are very unpredictable, and so the management is not going to be able to properly place people, and you're going to end up losing hours when you could have had some, and you're going to end up having hours when it's going to be dead. Training and education generally comes from best on-the-job training. It's going to be better to get the work done and to learn from that work than it's going to be to try and go get a degree. The degree is going to fool your employers, but it's not going to fool your work. You're going to perform better by learning first, on the job, by being a cook, by starting as a dishwasher, by moving your next step up to being a prep cook, dicing onions all day basically, and then moving up to being an actual cook, taking those onions and putting them into something better. Then being a sous chef, to actually learn under the chef that runs the kitchen. He's going to teach you more about this restaurant and about cooking than you would have learned just by doing it and making up as you go. Then, becoming a chef is the last thing that you can do. That's the epitome of your learning. You didn't even need a degree to get that far. It helps, yes, but that's not how it has to be done. You don't have to get a degree to become a chef. In fact, according to the research that I've done based on the interviews of chefs, people who've become a chef, people who are on their way to becoming a chef, generally becoming that kind of position involves being entirely random. Your chef is probably going to leave the business, is going to leave the restaurant because he's been insulted by the managers, or, above all else, just retiring. They're done with this job. It's a young man's game, and they can't do it anymore because they've gotten to that point in their lives where they can't actually do this job anymore. It would hurt them too much. What ends up happening is they pass the crown on, and they fall off the edge. And that's it. It's the last you see of them, and you're the next person in line to do the exact same thing that they were just doing. You can get a degree, and generally it costs the same as any other type of degree. There's less classes to it in that course. However, it runs for the same rates as most classes based on credit. So in Minnesota, about $145 per credit, per unit. That's off the top of my head, and I can't exactly guarantee that fact, but mostly you're better off learning by actually going and applying to be a dishwasher. Next is your coworkers. Not exactly that being a cook makes you crazy, but factor in the fact that based on the information I've learned, this line of work breeds psychopathy. Not exactly that it's going to make you crazy, but the kind of people that it draws in kind of causes crazy things to happen. Like, everybody you work with is going to have some sort of addiction, whether it be based on Anthony Bourdain's examples in his book Kitchen Confidential. People could be addicted to caffeine, something as low as caffeine, cigarettes, alcoholics. There's people who are addicted to meth, cocaine, any large variety of things, really. Then there's people with nervous tics. There's people who just naturally twitch. That's what they do. Our kitchen has a knee-jerk reaction that every time we cook things, we go, mm-hmm, and then we go back to what we were doing, as if it never even happened. It just happens over time. Next, not everyone you know and work with is going to be a good person. Not everybody you know and work with is going to be your friend. It's just like the real world. And being a cook has a very high assault rate between interpersonal relations. Cooks are very likely to hurt each other because of A, you're holding a knife all day. B, It's very hot. You're in a building where there's no windows where you're at. You haven't seen the light of day since your last smoke break. And all you can think of is the fact that somebody is insulting your food. And if that's another cook next to you, those are two people who are holding knives and can easily kill each other. Some people actually take that option. Which brings me to the personal aspect. It's very taxing. It's a very taxing job, and I don't mean to scare people away from it, but you lose out on a social life. Generally, you're too busy inside doing your work, and it requires you to work long hours, especially if you go for a full-time job and don't request the time off for school, which many restaurants don't give you that luxury. It's very physically taxing. You spend most of your day standing, and if you have knee problems or joint problems already, it's just going to make them worse. Don't expect to have a very good skeletal structure when you're done with this. You're going to work on a wet floor that you're going to end up slipping on at least once or twice in your time there. You work with knives. You're going to get stabbed. You're going to get cut. I have many cuts. I have scars left behind from very different types of damages. You're going to get burned. You're going to get burned. Your hearing is going to go. I have to yell because I can't hear. It's very hilarious, actually. Outside of work, we're just all yelling at each other because we are just that deaf. It's very mentally taxing. It's a high-stress job. You're constantly under pressure to get food in the window and gone before the customer can complain about it. You have 8 minutes to cook an order of, let's say, 10 people. That's maybe 3 types of entrees that involve steak, which are going to take a good solid portion of time, especially if they order it mid-well but not well done. Mentally, it's stressing as well because of the pure and simple fact of something about the high temperatures, the loud noises, and everything going on at once. If you mess something up, it's going to cause a major malfunction. And over time, it just kind of wears away at you, and that is why it is a young man's game. Only young people can do it because only young people's bodies are resilient enough to keep going until it catches up with them when they turn about 40, 50, and that's when you should be done. Last of all, though, anxieties are a bad thing to have in the kitchen. As I was just showing with the knife, you have to be okay with this. This kind of thing, you got to be ready for it. And this is the blade side. This right here is the blade side towards my face. I have to be okay with this. I have to understand that even if I'm not in control of the blade, I have to hope that the other person is. I have to be okay with this going in front of my face and have no issue with it. I have to be ready for anything. There's also the fact that there's grease flying everywhere. There's sauté pans that are sizzling with nothing but bubbling fat that's going to melt your skin off. In essence, though, if you're ready to take the heat of the kitchen, it's not a bad job. It's not at all. It pays well enough once you get higher in the ranks. It's a job that requires no previous knowledge, just on-the-job work. You work to get your education. We call it the Red Lodge Scholarship down where I work. And that's how you make it in this world. And you have to be willing to lose in order to gain later. And each year that you stay on the job is another reason for your next employer to hire you. And that's all it takes.